Today's topic is scapular muscle. Scapular muscle, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, teres major and subscapularis. Subscapularis is a multipinate muscle. This diagram I draw simply and you can understand and easily draw the diagram. This is scapula, this is humerus. This is supraspinatus, this is infraspinatus, this is teres minor, this is teres major. Supraspinatus origin and insertion of the greater tubercle, upper impression. Infraspinatus origin of the infraspinatus fossa and insertion of the middle impression of the greater tubercle. And teres minor, insertion of the lowest impression of the greater tubercle, and teres major are origin of the inferior angle of scapula and insertion of the bicipital groove. And this is also draw in this diagram. We can easily draw and we can easily understand also these three muscle: levator scapulae, rhomboids minor, rhomboid major. We can discuss in later. Supraspinatus origin, medial 2/3 of the supraspinatus fossa of the scapula. The muscle passes as a tendon laterally bent coracoacromial arch to bend with the capsule of the shoulder joint. Insertion, upper impression on the greater tubercle of the humerus. Nerve supply, suprascapular nerve C5 and C6 axon. Abductor of shoulder joint from 0 to 15. Simply we can easily remember origin, supraspinatus fossa of the scapula and insertion of the upper impression of the greater tubercle of the humerus, and nerve supply and action. Okay, supraspinatus. Infraspinatus origin, medial 2/3 of the infraspinatus fossa of the scapula. Insertion, middle impression on the greater tubercle of the humerus. Nerve supply, suprascapular nerve C5 and C6 axon. Lateral rotation of arm. It's simply remember origin. It's a infraspinatus fossa of the scapula and insertion of the middle impression of the greater tubercle of the humerus. You can see middle impression of the greater tubercle. Teres minor origin, upper 2/3 of the dorsal surface of the lateral border of the scapula. Insertion, lower impression on greater tubercle of humerus. Nerve supply, axillary nerve C5 and C6 action. Lateral rotation of arm. You can see here it's a dorsal surface of the scapula and lateral border of scapula of an insertion of the lowest impression of the greater tubercle. Teres major origin, lower 1/3 of the dorsal surface of the lateral border and inferior angle of scapula. Insertion, medial lip of bicipital groove of the humerus. Nerve supply, lower subscapularis nerve C5 and C6 action, middle rotation and adductors of arm. You can see here teres major origin from to the inferior angle of scapula and insertion of the bicipital groove. Subscapularis multipinate muscle origin, medial 2/3 of the subscapularis fossa and insertion lesser tubercle of the humerus. Nerve supply, upper and lower subscapularis nerve C5 and C6 axon, medial rotation and adductors of arm. We can easily remember by this diagram. Its origin from the subscapularis fossa and insertion of the lesser tubercle. We can easily draw the diagram and easily remember the muscle origin and insertion. This is not the scapular muscle, but we can correlate with the other muscle and scapular attachment. That's why we could including this part. Levator scapulae origin, transverse process of the C1 and C2, posterior tubercle of the transverse process of C3 and C4. Insertion, superior angle and upper part of the medial border up to triangular of the scapula scapular area. Nerve supply. A branch of the dorsal scapular nerve C5 branches from C3 and C4 axon help in elevation of scapula, steadies the scapula during the movement of arm. I can tell you, we can easily understand the levator scapulae origin from to the transverse process of C1 and C2 and transverse process of C3 and C4. Okay, origin and insertion of the upper part of the medial border of the scapula. Rhomboids minor origin lower part of the ligamentum nuchae and spine of the C7 and T1. Insertion of the base of the triangular area of the root of the spine of scapula. Nerve supply dorsal scapular nerve C5 axon retraction of scapula. We can see here in rhomboids minor origin from to the C7 and T1 and insertion of the spine of the scapula. Rhomboid major origin spine of the T2 to T5 supraspinatus ligamentus. Insertion of the medial border of the scapula below the root of the spine. Nerve supply dorsal scapular nerve C5 and axon retraction of scapula. We can see here in rhomboid major. Origin from the T2, T3, T4 and T5 and insertion of the medial border of the scapula of the spine. Okay, we can here draw the diagram and easily all three muscles and all these muscles are origin and insertion are remember. Okay, this diagram you draw and remember easily. You can show the diagram and easily remember. Thank you.